Hi everyone, hope you're having a great day today. My name is Keifer Wollert, and what I want to talk to you briefly about today is a historical figure named Alexander the Great. So without further introduction, let's take a look at him and what he did. So Alexander the Great, where did he conquer and how great was he? Let's get a more in-depth view. So what I want you to take from today is a learning target, and what I've prepared for us today is students will be able to identify Alexander the Great and be able to analyze his accomplishments during his reign. Now, what I really want you to think about in a deeper view here is how young he was, everything he accomplished, and also the area that he accomplished. So, when we think about someone being great, what actually makes them great? Is it their accomplishments throughout their life, such as Alexander and all the accomplishments that he made? And is it how long someone is remembered? For instance, Alexander the Great, we've remembered him from the BCE era all the way up until now as one of the most historical figures and important figures in time. Or is it somebody, how popular they become? For instance, someone that's very popular today, Kim Kardashian. I mean, we think she's popular now, but in the future, what will she be seen as? Will we still remember her as being a quote-unquote great figure? So, moving on. When we think of great, obviously there's great sports figures such as Michael Jordan, pictured here. Although he doesn't have great in his name, we think of him as great and probably be one of the greatest basketball players to ever live. In retrospect to that, we have Albert Einstein, and he doesn't have great next to his name, but he will always be a historical figure as well, just because of the accomplishments that he made and the person that he was. And then along with those two, along with Michael Jordan and Albert Einstein, we have Bill Gates. Obviously, he's accomplished a lot in his life, and will always be considered one of the, I guess, great innovators of today's time. But even though we don't label great to his name. So with that in mind, someone can be great without having great thrust upon them, such as Alexander the Great. So moving on. So a little background about Alexander the Great and who he was. So he was a great ruler that didn't exactly live a long life. He was born in 356 BC and died in 323 BCE, and he was only 32 years old. He was son of Philip II, and really he was always a guy that he had greatness in him. There's even a story that he tamed a horse. I can't remember the name, it escapes me right now. But he tamed a horse that no one else could tame, and then from that moment on, his father knew that he was destined for greater things. Another thing that Alexander the Great is really famous for is that he never lost a single battle. Although, he didn't fight as much because he died at the young age of 32, but he still accomplished many things. So, with that in mind, he did do one thing that the Athenians, his father, or the Spartans could not do, which was defeat the almighty Persians. And the Persian Empire was an empire that was something that was seen, they were trying to conquer the world, and nobody thought they were going to be able to defeat them. Well, Alexander the Great said, to heck with that, I'm going to do it anyways. So how was Alexander as a leader? And as a general, he was actually pretty good. He was respected by his soldiers, and when they got tired of marching, because they did conquer so much land, and we'll come back to that later and put it into retrospect, he took over a lot of land, but when they got tired of marching, he was, reasonable and said, okay, well, I guess you guys are pretty tired. We've accomplished a lot. Let's just take a break. So he wasn't too harsh on his soldiers. But the one thing, we were not sure if he was a great general because of his tactics or more because of his advanced weaponry. He did have a few weapons that other people that he was conquering didn't have in their arsenal. For instance, he had sarissas, which were developed by his father, actually, Philip II. And what those were 12 to 21 foot long, kind of spear-like, devices, weapons that they would use. And let's take a further look at that. So over here on the left, we see a soldier, and it really puts it in perspective how big the sarissas actually were. You can see how long it is there, as I mentioned, 12 to 20 foot. And what this really did, it wasn't very agile, but it allowed them to really reach into their opponents and actually have or fight from a distance, which is obviously good because other people were fighting with short swords and this and that. So when they charged on, they could really get a first stab at them, no pun intended. And over here to the right, we see a crossbow. Now, these were available to other societies, but I think Alexander just had a lot more of them in his arsenal, which allowed him to shoot at a further distance than the natural bow and arrow that we see, throughout history and probably will see. So moving on, where in the world did Alexander conquer? His military campaign, it was one that was huge and took over a good portion of Alexander's life. And where it was mainly through Asia and Northeast Africa. So that is a lot of land. So let's put that into perspective here. Oh, excuse me. So let's just quickly Google it. So let's go here, click on images. And as you can see, we get all these paths and everything that he conquered. Let's click on this one. It looks like it might be good. Yeah, and as we can see here, this one's pretty cool because it lays out his entire route. And you can see, I mean, we're looking at Persia over here in Northeast Africa, as we mentioned, a little bit down here. And this is a good map because it actually says major battles. And like I said earlier, it gives you his entire route. So when talking about all the land that he conquered, we have to look at all of this and really think about the accomplishment that he did. I mean, look at this. This is where he started out. I mean, let's just go all the way down here and conquer everybody. So, I mean, like I said, he conquered a lot of land in a short period of time. So let's go back from the current slide here. Moving on. So eventually, Alexander, as most leaders do, had a downfall. So although he was great at leading and he was really, really good at his battle tactics and everything like that and all his technology and weaponry, he mainly just specialized in tearing things down and not building them back up. Which, I mean, it works for a small period of time, but when you try to create an empire that will last forever, it's not exactly going to work. Now, as we mentioned, he was a young man when he died, about 32 years old, and he died in the June of 323 BCE, and this was just a month before turning 33, so I mean, he almost made it. Now, as for the cause of his death, we're not exactly sure how he died, but it was some mysterious illness that, you know, as I said, we're not exactly sure how it came about. We don't know if it was a disease, malaria, if he was poisoned, or if it was just, you know, too much drinking, partying, something like that, which occurred back in these times. So what happened to his kingdoms and everything once he died? So after his death, his empire broke up into three different empires called the Hellenistic kingdoms. And that being the first one, the Antigonoids, which was the Greece and Macedonia area. The second was the Seleucids in the Persia area, and the Ptolemies in Egypt. So each one of these was led by Alexander's generals. And that concludes our slideshow. But what happened to his area was these generals eventually, you know, they each got power hungry, and what they wanted to do was each take over the entire empires that Alexander created. So eventually they fought each other, everything fell out of order real quick, and the entire empire and everything that Alexander the Great created had been lost. So that's a brief overview of Alexander the Great and what he was about. He was a great leader. Like I said, he died at the age of 32, so he didn't really have his entire life to finish out his empire. We don't know how it would have finished out. Maybe he would have became a better empire builder, so to speak, if he had survived a little longer than he did. But in a brief, short video, that is Alexander the Great and what he is all about. So thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it and have a good rest of your day.